Hello, and welcome back to Ask a News Worker. Today we're going to be talking about the news and education. Is the news education? Is watching the news, reading the news, listening to the news the same as getting an education? Are you getting an education from watching the news, reading the news, listening to the news, consuming news content? Is news education? I would say, as a news worker, as someone who's worked in the news business for some time, I would say that the news is a start, perhaps, a path towards becoming more educated about something, a particular topic, particular subject, an area of interest. I would not say the news is a complete education. And I say this in part because I've encountered a lot of people in my life, professional and personal, who seem to think that reading the news, consuming the news, is all they need to do to have a real understanding of what is, quote, going on, to have an education in a particular area. I've encountered many people who seem very proud of how much news they've read, how much news they've consumed, and seem to think that that's all they really need to know when it comes to a particular topic or subject. I'm here to tell you, if you haven't figured it out already, that the news is not enough, in my opinion, to be considered educated, to be considered an educated person, to get an education in a particular topic or subject. As I've said in other videos, the news is primarily concerned with what is happening right now, with what is happening today. It's part of why it's called the news. It's new stuff. It's new information, new knowledge to some degree. It's new material. It's not old material. They don't call it the olds. They call it the news. If you want to know what happened before today, before this current period of time, you're going to have to read history books. You're going to have to maybe go to the library or take a course, do something. The news is not going to tell you every single thing you need to know about a particular subject or topic. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind, just to remember that even though you've read a lot of news items, a lot of news pieces, or consumed a lot of news, you still don't know everything. And I certainly don't know everything. I am not an expert maybe on anything in particular. I've worked in the news business for a while, so I feel like I can comment upon that, but I'm always learning myself. I will read a news item, sometimes one that I'm helping edit or prepare, and then read more about it and find out, oh wow, there's a lot more to that subject than I ever realized. To take one recent example, there is an ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine at the moment as I'm recording this video, and there is a lot of history there that one could look into to better understand the conflict and how it happened, how we got to this point. Again, I'm not making a pronouncement on which side is right or who deserves to win. I'm not making any judgments there. I'm simply saying that there's a lot of context, there's a lot of pretext, a lot of background and history to what is happening in that particular conflict in that part of the world. But you're not going to get that necessarily from the daily news. You're just going to hear about war progress, things being blown up, people being killed, very sad, tragic things like that, statements from politicians, from military leaders. You're not going to get the full story. In order to become educated on that particular topic, on that particular region, you're going to have to read deeper books. You're going to have to perhaps even listen to interviews with scholars who have studied the situation for a long time. The news is not enough. The news is not enough to be considered an educated person on many subjects and topics, especially ones that are as dense as politics, history, society, science. So no, the news is not really an education, not a comprehensive education at least. If you read the news, if you watch the news, if you listen to the news, if you consume a lot of news, that's a start. It's good. I mean, you're finding out about the world around you, and that's a positive thing. But I would advise not to fool yourself or be mistaken into thinking that because you've watched the news that day that you suddenly know everything there is to know about the topic in question. Again, this is a very common thing I'll meet some very overconfident people, in my opinion, who think because they read an article on a particular thing that they're suddenly an expert in that and they know everything there is to know. Meanwhile, the article itself might not be complete. As we've touched on in previous videos, there's a lot of articles that don't include a lot of relevant, important information for a person to make a decision or judgment based on what they've read on the situation at hand. So it requires a lot more. Becoming an educated or enlightened or sophisticated thinker of any sort, you have to go further than the news. And I say that as a news worker. I completely admit it. There may be some people in the news business who think, no, all you need to do is read the news. Just read the newspaper every day, and that's the only information you need to read. It's really not. It's not enough. If you want to know depth, if you want to know depth and breadth, if you want to know a subject more deeply, you have to go beyond the news. The news is just, once again, telling you what's happening today. It's not that deep in the end. And if you don't believe me, pick any topic, a historical topic, a political topic, and go and find a book on it and read that book. And then tell me after the fact if everything in there was completely new to you or if everything was contained within the news reports that you had consumed prior to reading the book. You'll probably find that the book had a lot in there that the news does not cover because, again, the news doesn't take an interest in what happened 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, 500 years ago necessarily in reporting today's news. There might be a line like the conflict began in this particular year. There'll be a line or two, maybe even a paragraph, depending on the piece. But generally speaking, if you want to know what's really going on, if you want to know a subject well, you have to go beyond the news. So the news is not really education unto itself. It's a start. It's information that can point you to an education. I would say thinking of the news as information alone is probably the best approach, because education to me is a little more sophisticated, a little more developed than information. The difference between education and information, I would say they are different. You have to go beyond. So for the purposes of this video, and it's a big topic, it's like probably say in every single one of these videos, it's a big topic, but no, I would say that the news is not really education. It's information. It's clues that can point you towards deeper knowledge of something, but it's really up to you as the individual to go further and find out more of what's going on with a particular topic, subject, region, person. A lot of people will get mad at the news. Oh, you didn't tell me everything. Well, it's not really the news's job to tell you every single thing that's going on, because that would be enormous. And there's been many, many books written on all sorts of topics that still don't cover it all. It's a very large and complex world with a lot of history. A lot of stuff has happened up until this point, and the news is not going to clue you in on all that. So what I'm saying is that if you want to know more, you have to do the work yourself and not just rely on the news to tell you everything. So no, the news is not really an education, not in a comprehensive sense. It's a start. And I recommend that if you want to go further, you have to go beyond the news. You have to put the newspaper down. You have to close the news window, the news outlet, and get a book. Get a quality book written by a reputable scholar or writer on a particular subject. And there you'll start to learn. Then you'll start to learn more depth about what is actually happening. Or maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Is the news everything you need to know? Do you really just need to stick to media outlets and newspapers to know everything that's going on in the world, past or present, or even future? Tell me what you think. Write in the comments, send me an email, and we'll continue the discussion of news and information, education, wisdom. Is there wisdom in news? That's another video. Stay tuned. Subscribe, like, all those things. Keep joining me here on Ask a News Worker. Thanks for watching.